I'm going to call the meeting to order. So first, we'll start out with a roll call. Darcy, could you do that, please?
Commissioner Stevens,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy. You're on mute.
Yes, present.
Commissioner Lee,
Present.
Commissioner Founds,
Here.
Commissioner Cantonwine,
Present.
Commissioner Satter,
Present.
Commissioner Wilson. I do not see Commissioner Wilson in the audience either.
Okay,
Commissioner Peterson.
here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for a public comment. Any issue or concern to the Planning Commission, except for what we're discussing tonight in the public hearing. The public hearing is on file ZDO 293, and it's related to the 2026 minor amendment package. Just a small package that there will be an opportunity for public testimony during that time, which will be later in the agenda. So is there anyone in attendance who would like to provide comment on something other than the ZDO 293? Please raise your hand feature now. Anyone out there? You're on mute, Darcy.
It looks like Dennis's hands up.
Sorry, I have Dennis Tilka.
Okay. Hello, Dennis. Are you there? That doesn't
I'm
sound.
sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but we're getting an echo.
I don't know what that is. I'll just turn my speaker off.
Perfect.
Do you have an echo?
No, it stopped it.
Oh, okay. Is what I'd like to talk about is ZDO 704. It's going to be coming up eventually under clear and objective standards.
Okay.
And our CPO, we reworked the zoning ordinance and came up with a bunch of suggested language. And we were hoping that you would get a copy of it and get a chance to look at it before it comes up. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Trying to remember when that's coming. Do you know, Darcy? Or Martha?
So I think that is related to Joy Field's project under the clear and objective standards.
Right.
And you still have a few study sessions set up. I don't believe any public hearings will be scheduled until early 2027.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's when you would consider proposed changes. I don't know what the next study session will be about, if it's about Section 704 in the zoning development ordinance. I imagine that would be a good time to discuss it, but that's something that Jennifer and Joy would have to determine.
But it sounds like they've already submitted their comments.
Yes.
Okay.
We have a tentative study session on August 10th.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming we will receive those comments then at that session. Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Oh, Ryan, you had your hand raised?
Commissioner Wilson's in the audience, it looks like. We want to get him into our session.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm working on that.
Okay.
You got it covered, Darcy? All right, so he'll be joining us shortly. All righty. Why don't I see those in my screen? I must not have something set up properly.
You have to click on participants and then choose attendees.
There it is. Got it. All right, I see it now. All right. Okay, I guess with that, we can jump into the public hearing. We're all pretty excited about this. So I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. So I have some comments that I need to read. So bear with me for a few minutes here. So the public hearing is now open for the consideration of ZDO 293, a legislative proposal to amend the zoning and development ordinance with corresponding changes to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan. Assisting it in the hearing today are several members of the county staff, Principal Planner Martha Fritzie, Senior Planner Melissa Lord, Planner 2 Nick Hart, and Administrative Specialist Darcy Reinhardt. This public hearing is being conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include members of the Planning Commission and county staff, have both audio and video capability. If a panelist is participating with audio but not video, members of the audience will not see the panelist's name on their screen, but will be able to hear them when they speak. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county's website as soon as possible. So I have a few general statements. Excuse me. The Planning Commission is charged with making a recommendation on the legislative amendment proposal to the Board of County Commissioners. The record from this hearing will be forwarded to the board, which will make the final decision on this matter. The board will conduct another hearing on this application on June 16, 2026 at 11 a.m. That hearing will be done de novo, meaning that the hearing will be started anew and additional testimony may be offered. Tonight's hearing will not go beyond 10 p.m. unless a majority of the planning commissioners in attendance vote to continue past that time. If not concluded, it will be continued at a date and time certain. The hearing may be continued for other reasons as well. If an announcement of an additional hearing date and time is made tonight, it will be the only notice given of the additional hearing. So now I'm going to talk about how we're going to conduct the hearing. So first we're going to hear the planning and zoning staff report. Then there'll be entry in the record of any additional correspondence that's been received, any technical information from other government agencies, testimony by representatives of recognized community planning organization or hamlets, testimony by any other person. Then we'll close the public hearing and the Planning Commission will have a discussion and take action. So with that, let's go ahead and proceed with the planning and zoning staff report. Martha?
All righty, let me share our presentation. We'll get started as soon as it starts. Hi, Joe. All right, can everyone see that? Excellent, everyone's way over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Chair mentioned, we are here to discuss ZDO 293, minor and time-sensitive comprehensive plan and ZDO amendments. This is a legislative amendment package that will make changes to, proposes to make changes to one chapter of the comprehensive plan, 40 sections of our zoning and development ordinance or ZDO, and it proposes to add 2 new sections to the ZDO. This is a package that you have similar to other packages you've seen in the past. It's something that we try to do annually or biannually in order to ensure that our regulations comply with state law, particularly with new mandates out of state law, also to clarify existing language and correct errors. And it often includes optional provisions, but it's those that require only a minimal amount of analysis. It's really intended to be a minor package. I do understand that changing that many sections of code, your packet didn't look too minor. There's a lot of pages. And I apologize for that, but we because of the things that we were doing, it really ended up touching a lot of sections in our zoning code. So this year's minor and time sensitive code amendment package proposes to do a number of things, and we have sort of summarized them into 5 actions or 5 buckets or types of amendments. The first being implementing recent changes in state law. These may be changes that happen through the legislature or rulemaking. These are changes that are either now in effect or will be in effect very, very soon. And so it requires us to update our zoning and development ordinance to implement these changes. The second action would be to align the agriculture and forest zone requirements with state law. This includes some recent changes to state law, but it also includes a pretty in-depth audit of state law and our zoning code. Jennifer Hughes, our planning director, did most of that and really focused on exclusive farm use, the agriculture zone, and found a number of areas, a surprising number of areas, I think, where our code is no longer consistent with state law. And so there were a fair number of changes in those zones that are being proposed. The next action would be to amend certain standards within the Willamette River Greenway. And Melissa Lord is going to talk to you a little bit about what those are and what that means. The other action is to clarify how to identify lot lines for measuring structure setbacks, which seems like something really easy, but it's not. And Nick is going to talk to you about why we have done that and what we're proposing. And then the last bucket is sort of a catch-all. It's other minor changes. We like to, where possible, reduce administrative burdens, add some clarifying language. In this case, we even added some definitions to clarify some standards. And then, of course, nobody's perfect. We always find sort of housekeeping type corrections, correcting citations, typos, and things like that. So I'm going to start in on number 1. This is a very, very big topic. I could talk about it for hours, but I promise you I will not. We have talked a little bit about in past study sessions about all of the changes that keep happening through the legislative sessions and all the changes to state law. And so there are a lot that are currently in effect. A lot of them came out of the 2025 legislative session, some before, and even a couple from 2026. And so we are proposing to incorporate all of those changes into our zoning and development ordinance. And there's a sort of a couple different categories of these changes. One is procedural. There are some new procedural pathways that were created by the legislature. Most of these really apply to applications for housing. Some of them also apply to these special uses that I'll talk to you a little bit about. The legislature created these sort of special carve-outs for certain uses that the county is and other cities are now required to allow in certain areas. But procedurally, there's a couple of different new application types that we are sort of subtypes that we are proposing to add to section 1307 of our zoning code to try to incorporate some of these changes. And so just generally speaking, without taking too much of your time, there's 4 different types of applications. A type 1 is really, it's a ministerial, an applicant applies, it doesn't, the decision does not involve discretionary standards. It's made at a staff level. A type 2, an applicant does apply but the decision does involve potentially some discretionary approval criteria. A type 3, which we're not talking about today, are the more complicated, more discretionary applications like zone changes or conditional uses, excuse me. And type 4s are what we're doing today. They're legislative changes. And so because of recent legislation, we have had to sort of add these subtypes because there's sort of different procedures that we're required to use for certain application types, but it really is a type 2, but it's not. And so we're trying to weave all of these things together. And how that ended up was creating these new application types, a type 1H, which applies to housing projects seeking approval only under clear and objective standards. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that's going to mean in terms of procedures. And then there's a type 2E, which is for expedited land divisions and applies to certain partitions and subdivision applications and also middle housing land divisions. And then a type 2S are these special uses and some other housing applications, which are really a type 2, but they have certain special requirements, including things like different notice distance or no notice at all, different comment periods, different rules on how appeals are processed. And so if you're confused, you're not the only one. It is very confusing. We're in the process of creating a big table for ourselves, for staff, and also a flow chart, and are struggling through it as planners to try to wrap all of these pieces together. So we are doing our best to add these into the code with this package, understanding that some of these may be moving parts still, and may require some changes again. And speaking of changes, I'm going to hand this off to Nick really quick to talk about a little bit about middle housing land divisions and how that is changing.
Thanks, Martha. The changes to middle housing land divisions are kind of a revision of the middle housing land division process that was originally adopted when middle housing became a thing in Oregon. So that's the duplexes through quadplexes and cottage clusters in urban areas. When you build those, you also have the opportunity to do what is called a middle housing land division, which is to divide each unit in that middle housing, be it each half of a duplex or each cottage in a cottage cluster, onto their own lots. With the most recent set of changes, they've increased when people can apply for middle housing land divisions. So you can now apply concurrently with your traditional subdivision or partition application. You can also apply for a middle housing land division before, during, or after you submit your building permits for the middle housing. And then possibly most critically, they've provided flexibility where we can now allow the utility districts for water and wastewater to determine whether or not separate services are going to be required or not. Currently, you're required to run a separate water line and a separate sewer line to each unit, or at least set up separate accounts with those utilities. Moving forward, planning and sort of the zoning and development ordinance will be out of that, and will be allowing service districts to apply their own standards to those utilities as they see fit. So those are the big changes. The other one is that it aligns the middle housing land division application with the type 2E procedure that is also applicable to expedited land divisions. So there's a little bit of consolidation in terms of the number of procedures that's going on here as well.
Thanks, Nick. And then I mentioned there were 2 new housing applications, and these were this first one called an urban housing application came out of the 2025 legislature. There is a requirement that within an urban growth boundary, if an applicant is applying for a planned unit development, variance or zone change, and this is a zone change without a corresponding comprehensive plan designation change, and it's for housing, there is this new streamlined process that they can go through, which includes a 14-day notice period to neighbors. So neighbors do get notified, but the notice period is, or the comment period is shorter than our typical 20 days. And most importantly, it requires that any issue be raised during that, it must be raised during that 14-day comment period in order for it to be considered on appeal. And so that's a little bit different than our current process. The issue does have to be raised, but this is very very strict that it needs to be raised within that 14-day period. And so that only applies to those types of proposed developments. All of the rest of the standard procedures under a type 2 would apply in terms of timeline, completeness checks and timelines and things like that. I think one thing that did change pretty notably, I think Nick may have to correct me if I'm wrong, is that in consolidating the middle housing land divisions and expedited land divisions, it took away the public notice. There is no public notice requirement. In fact, we can't send public notice with those two types of land divisions anymore. So this is a little bit different. You can. This last one doesn't even really have a name. I'm calling it right now the clear and objective housing application. This came out of the 2026 legislature. There's still a lot of questions going back and forth between various counties and cities and the state on how this actually is going to work. We think it applies to all housing, both inside the UGB and outside the UGB and rural residential zones that are subject to the clear and objective standards requirements. And it applies only if the housing proposal is using clear and objective standards, as opposed to these discretionary, optional discretionary standards that we are allowed to have. It's a type 1 because it only uses clear and objective standards. It is not under using any discretionary standards, but it is limited in that notice may be sent to neighboring property owners only within a certain distance, which is different than our current distance, but only the applicant may appeal to LUBA. And so notice can be sent, and property owners can provide comments, but property owners do not have a right to apply the decision to LUBA. And so this is causing a lot of consternation and some questions. As far as we can tell, this is what the rules say, and so this is how we have proposed to include it in our zoning code at this point. So getting past procedures a little bit, there also were a number of special uses that the legislature is requiring be located. These generally apply in the urban areas. In Exhibit 2 of your packet, I included a table that describes where, either in the urban or rural area, these particular uses have to be allowed, including childcare centers, which really affect multifamily zones and commercial zones, and to some extent industrial zones in the urban area. Emergency shelters, which actually affect any zone in the urban area, and rural residential zones. Emergency shelter siting is something that actually has been in the statute and been a requirement for a number of years now. The county has actually approved 2 of those in the urban area, just directly out of state law. It originally was going to sunset, but now it's tied to the count, the homeless count, the statewide homeless count. And so we don't think it's going to sunset for quite some time. So we decided to add it to our code. All of these are just really for ease of administration, because it's so hard to implement state law directly out of state law when it's presumably, in many cases, in conflict with our county zoning code. Residential treatment facilities and treatment homes are required, have to be allowed on public lands, in the urban area, land zone for residential use, commercial use, certain industrial lands. There are some limitations. They can't locate on areas that are protected as hazard areas, like the flood hazard areas, steep slopes, things like that. Mental and psychiatric hospitals and crisis stabilization centers are 2 separate uses that the legislature allowed, sort of in different places, only they have to locate adjacent to each other. And so I think there's going to be fairly limited applicability for these. But again, this is something that has to be allowed in the majority of our urban area, although mental and psychiatric hospitals do not have to be allowed in residential zones. And then preschool, pre-kindergarten associated with a place of worship, that was added into sort of the allowed accessory uses for places of worship. this applies to places of worship that are allowed under the code, not to non-conforming uses. And so then my last slide dealing with implementing state law, I told you I could talk to you about this for hours and hours, has to do with parking. And we have talked about this in the past. Under state law, under the Transportation Planning Rule, the Oregon Administrative Rule 660, Division 12, it says that within the urban area, well, it doesn't say it like this, but the rules mean that within the urban area, Clackamas County can no longer require any minimum off-street parking associated with development. There are also maximums in certain urban areas for off-street parking that have to be applied, and then certain design standards including tree canopy for parking lots, new parking lots that are over a half of an acre in size. These rules are already in effect. As of July 1, 2024, the county has not been able to enforce any of our off-street parking mandates that are in the ZDO. We have been implementing them right out of state law. It is interesting to know because Nick and Melissa were kind enough to look up some permitting history. Since then, in 2024 and 25, off-street parking has continued to be provided by developers in the urban area. With that said, we have had one cottage cluster development, to my knowledge, with 5 units that did not provide parking. All of the rest of the middle housing developments provided parking, and in fact provided more parking than we would have required before July 1, 2024. They would have had to provide one off-street parking space per dwelling unit, and much more was provided. And then other developments, we had some commercial, multifamily, institutional uses, provided about the same amount of parking that would have been required under our ZDO. I think it was about 98% of the total that would have been required. So that doesn't mean that this is going to continue to happen, but it does mean that developers, in many cases, do want to provide parking, and understand that Clackamas County is not an intense urban area like the city of Portland. Yes, I said that in a public meeting. So that is sort of all of the largely housing related changes under state law. There were some changes under state law that affected our agriculture and forest zones. But like I mentioned, the planning director also went through in detail both the Oregon Administrative Rules and the revised statutes as they relate to what sorts of uses and procedures we have to allow in these zones. For Clackamas County, our agriculture and forest zones are exclusive farm use, or EFU, which is section 401. Section 406 is timber, or TBR. And then ag forest, which is a mixed farm forest, which is section 407. And so there were a fair number of changes to those 3 sections in your packet. Those were made for consistency with state law. They included a number of changes to reflect recent rulemaking in EFU, and also recent legislative changes, including the repeal of the state wildfire map. But then when Jennifer was looking, our planning director, Jennifer, was looking at how our code aligned with state law, she found a lot of other inconsistencies, including certain approval periods. And so amendments were made to those to align those with state law. There were some land divisions that were allowed under state law that were not in our code. And so we added those. There were a few things that she deleted from our code because they either didn't seem to be allowed in state law, or in the case, or they required an analysis, and that the county had not been that the county had not yet completed in order for that specific use to be allowed. And so it was confusing to have something in our code that we actually couldn't allow. She looked at this through the lens of the direction that the board has given us over the past several years that there are listed uses in farm and forest zone that the county has to allow outright. And then there are some that the county may allow and subject to certain standards. The Board of County Commissioners has consistently given us direction to allow for as much as state law allows, to not be more restrictive. And so she was looking at it with this lens and found a number of discrepancies. Like I said, she took the deepest dive into the farm, into the agricultural zones, into EFU, but there were a number of changes also in Section 406, the timber zone. And then finally, Section 407 looks really, really scary because there's a lot of red line and a lot of deletions. At the end of the day, it didn't substantively change anything. What happened, what we are proposing at this point is there is this extensive table of uses in the ag forest zone. In the mixed farm and forest zone, with the exception of dwellings, generally speaking, somebody could do everything allowed in the farm zones, everything in 401 and EFU, and everything in 406. And it's subject to the same standards in both of those zones. Where the standards are conflicting, you have to either meet both or the more restrictive standards. And so rather than continue this long, long list of uses from both of those zones, the proposal is to take that long list out and just simply send people to either Section 401 or 406 to understand what they can do. So that's why it's not substantively different. The substantive changes, of course, would be if something substantively changed in 401 or in 406, then it also will have changed in 407, if that makes sense. So I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk. That is all I'm going to say at this point about aligning our code with state law. I am going to hand this off to Melissa to change gears here a little bit and talk about one of our optional or a few of our optional changes proposed as they relate to the Willamette River Greenway.
Thank you, Martha. Well, good evening, folks. I'll talk to you this evening about the proposed changes to the Willamette River Greenway code. Our zoning code section that applies these rules is ZDO Section 705 and Chapter 3 of our comprehensive plan. We're not proposing to change or amend the Greenway design plan or the Greenway boundary in any way. What I will explain to you tonight is just a couple of changes that we are proposing. So first, we're looking to add some clarification on how to measure the size of a dock. We often get questions about this from new planners and from customers, and so we're proposing to add language to help clarify what we've already been doing, as well as a diagram that is consistent with DSL. So hopefully that should add some clarification for everybody proposing a dock or amending a dock in the future. Also related to docks, and I'll talk to you on our next slide about it a bit more, is the proposal to remove a prohibition on docks, on non-commercial private docks in a specific area of the Greenway. And then lastly, I'll talk to you about the proposal to remove a height restriction that applies specifically in the high-density residential zoning district within the Willamette River Greenway. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on here, we've got a map, and I'll describe the map to you very quickly just so we know what in the heck we're looking at. On the left-hand side of our map, we've got, well, both maps here are showing the extent of what we call a limited use area on the Willamette River Greenway. There are two areas on the Willamette River that are identified as this limited use area. The first, which is the left-hand side of your map here, is generally near the Molalla River State Park or the Weber Farm Natural Area. And then on the right-hand side of this map is the second area of the limited use area. And it's generally between, I guess, north of Rock Island and then Balancing Rock as well. So what we looked at in doing this mapping exercise, we took a look at these limited use areas and identified that of 41 lots within this limited use area that have homes on them, only 3 of these lots currently don't have a dock. Now, our zoning code actually prohibits docks in this limited use area. And so for whatever which reason, only 3 homes currently are actually impacted by this prohibition. And so our proposal is to remove the prohibition, as it really does have such a limited impact moving forward by restricting only 3 of 41 riverfront properties with homes on them currently. As I mentioned, there are height limitations or height restrictions on residential development in the Willamette River Greenway currently. Currently, the zoning code reads that any residential development shall be limited to 35 feet in height. Non-residential development doesn't have a height restriction in the Willamette River Greenway, so we'll specifically focus on residential development. Interestingly, this 35-foot height limit currently applies to low-density residential zones. But in the high-density residential zones outside of the Willamette River Greenway, there is no maximum height allowed for residential structures. So what we've looked at is to amend the code in order to remove that restriction on residential height limits, specifically in the HDR, high density residential zoning districts. Now, the map here shows a couple things that I'll draw your attention to. The first are all the properties highlighted in orange is every property within the Willamette River Greenway overlay. And the Greenway overlay is in this blue line shown kind of on the perimeters of the river itself. But every property in the high density residential zone that's within the Willamette River Greenway. Now, our mapping software shows the entire parcel, but if you do focus in a little bit more on where that blue line delineating that Willamette River Greenway buffer is, you can see that only a few parcels are wholly incorporated in the HDR zone in the Willamette River Greenway, or just small fractions of specific properties. So our proposal really to remove the height limit on HDR zoned property within the Greenway doesn't actually impact too many lots overall within the entire Greenway, and certainly within the HDR zones itself. There will be a small restriction, a small area where that restriction would be alleviated. This proposal would align more closely with the current residential development allowances in the HDR zones that aren't in the Willamette River Greenway.
Thanks, Melissa. We're going to move on to Nick, who's going to talk about a couple of other topics.
Sure. The first of these that I'll talk with you about tonight is the work that we did to clarify how lot lines are established for the purposes of determining setbacks. Last time we were here to talk to you about this amendments package, we shared a bunch of interesting shaped lots that we've found as we're doing our permit reviews, and shared a little bit about the ways in which those lots cause problems for staff and cause problems for members of the public in determining where is my front lot line, where is my side lot line, and then how can I, situate my development on this lot to meet the setback requirements. The bulk of the work that we did in making these changes can be found in ZDO sections 202 and 903, which are each the definitions and setback exception sections, respectively. And with those changes, what we were able to do is try and make our language a little bit more straightforward. We were defining terms where we hadn't defined them before, and we were clarifying definitions that we already had to hopefully make things a little bit more approachable for folks and to make sure that we're actually getting the outcomes we want. With that, and because we were only making changes to these definitions, our hope is that we haven't made any change to the setback distances required by various zones. So if it was a requirement that you were 15 feet from your front lot line before, the requirement is still that you are 15 feet from your front lot line. I know that at the last meeting we had heard a little bit of discussion, and certainly the board as well. I think there was some discussion of evaluating some of the distances that we are requiring, but that's not what we've done with this package. So it may be a question that we're directed to look into moving forward, but with this one, we were really focused on the nuts and bolts of making sure we get the lot lines in the right places in a way that is consistently understandable for staff and members of the public. And Martha, could I get the next slide? Oh, perfect. This one is a bit of a grab bag, other minor changes. So these are all of the little things, the sort of pain points that we've identified as we've worked with the code, and as people have pointed out to us as they try and work with our code. Taking steps to reduce administrative burdens, correct citations where we had errors, remove incorrect citations, and provisions that no longer say what they used to say. Little hanging things that were left over from prior cleanup projects and things like that. We sought to increase clarity by adding definitions and reworking some of the language to try and avoid things that cause confusion for staff and the public. And generally, this is just sort of our housekeeping bucket. The biggest procedural change is going to be the next slide here, which is that Jennifer, who's the planning director, has decided that we're going to do away with most all of our time extensions. Time extensions are a part of our code that has been here for a long time. Generally, our land use approvals are valid for 4 years, and at any point in your last year of your approval period, an applicant may request up to 2 additional years to implement their approval, to get things built out, to establish their uses, to finish their subdivision, whatever it may be. The way that time extensions work in our code is an applicant is essentially required to demonstrate that their project still meets all of the approval criteria. And what that means is it's basically the same as doing a new application all over again. It's a lot of time for staff and it's a lot of time for applicants. And ultimately, our zoning and development ordinance is not changing so substantially so often that we frequently find that things that we approved 4 years ago are in no way, shape, or form approvable today. A lot of times these are kind of rote exercises in rehashing a lot of what had already been gone over before. And so with this, the proposal is to extend almost all of our approval periods from 4 years to 6 years. So to essentially just give everyone an extra 2 years off the bat, and then to get rid of that opportunity to do a time extension. So there won't be any 8-year approvals coming out of this. It's just everyone's going to get 6 years. The one exception to that is some approval periods in our zoning code come directly from the natural resource zones. Those are the ag, forest, EFU, and timber that Martha was talking about earlier. Those are set out by state law. We can't do anything to change those, and so those will continue to match those requirements, whatever they may be.
Thanks, Nick. And I will say that this is one of those items that created a lot of paperwork for you. There were a number of sections in the packet where this was the only change, but we have to provide the whole section with the red line. And so hopefully it was helpful that there were summaries of the changes at the beginning of each section, so you understood which of those were really just there because of this. One of the other minor changes has to do with specialized structures in our industrial zones. And so there is a category of structures identified in our industrial zones, or well, identified in our code, called silos, towers, and other specialized storage and processing structures. Currently, they're found actually in section 1005 under siting, building and site design. Currently, these types of structures are prohibited in our light industrial zones, which are light industrial and business park, unless they are inside of a building and the building needs to meet all of the design and building standards. You can store in it what you want. These types of structures currently are allowed both inside and outside buildings in general industrial zones. It came to our attention that maybe there are some circumstances in which these types of specialized storage structures could and should be located outside in the light industrial zones in certain circumstances. And so we looked at it and talked about it and included in this package a proposal that would allow such structures outside in the light industrial and business park zones, but subject to certain limitations. Because there are certain limitations already for outdoor storage and display and processing and operations in those zones. And so in this case, the proposal would be to limit the height to 12 feet for these specialized structures. It has to locate behind the building, and it needs to be screened with a fence from neighboring properties, a minimum 6-foot fence. And so that would be the proposal to allow, on a limited basis, certain specialized storage structures outside. And I know the question is going to be asked, well, what is a specialized storage structure? And that's a very, very good question. And I know there was some testimony that you received in your packet, exhibits 3 and 4, related to this specific item. And there was a specific request to define a specialized structure. We've talked about it. It's a very hard thing to define. A specialized structure really isn't about what it's storing. It's a structure, and the example that was in the testimony and that we think about is, is a storage tank for something. It's not really a structure. It's intended to store something very specific, be it hazardous or not, be it water or some sort of, hazardous chemical, but it's a structure that can't meet standard building design and building codes and obviously and shouldn't. And silos and towers are also specialized structures. They tend to be a little different than regular structures in terms of having to meet building designs, not building codes, but building designs for aesthetic purposes. And so the specialized structure, we stopped a little short of actually creating a definition because we didn't want to unintentionally restrict something that we think should be allowed under this, and without understanding sort of the breadth of what we have out there that we would define as a specialized structure. The proposal is to leave it without a definition. We have been able in the past to understand what this means in our code in the general industrial zone, and so we would just continue to sort of work with the same understanding if this proposal moves forward to allow it on this limited basis outside in the light industrial zones. I swear I'm almost done. One other minor change that I want to bring to your attention is single room occupancies, only because this arguably is not required in our code yet, but it will be required under state law as of January 1st, 2027. And I wanted to add it to our code now for a couple of reasons. We've talked about SROs before in the past because we did have to add them to all of our urban residential zones. SROs, this is the definition of SRO out of state law. It's a little bit confusing, but it's essentially like dormitory style living. They're not actual dwelling units. They're units that folks live in, but they have shared kitchen space or shared bathroom spaces in the structure. And so state law required SROs be allowed in all residential zones. Arguably, it already should be allowed in urban commercial zones that allow multi-family housing and congregate housing types, but it's not real clear. It is clear in recent legislation that as of January 1, it will have to be allowed. I think personally, I wanted to include this because if somebody were to come in right now in a commercial zone that allows multifamily housing and congregate housing and other sort of multi-unit housing types, if they were to propose a single room occupancy, they would have to go through a similar use determination. And to me, this falls under this administrative burden. Why? Why would we send somebody through a similar use determination, which is an interpretation which will take, 4 months potentially, when this is going to have to be allowed in January anyway? I think it's pretty obvious this is a similar use to other sorts of sort of multi-unit housing situations. And so that's why we're proposing to put it in our code right now. So that's the big long explanation of all of the changes that we're making, hopefully, or most of the changes, at least the most pertinent ones. As per usual, when we are making changes to our comprehensive plan, our zoning code, we need to make sure that we are meeting all of the applicable approval criteria. The findings are included in the staff report that was in your packet. It includes findings against the various statewide planning goals, also the Oregon revised statutes and administrative rules, because a lot of these apply in the Portland Metropolitan Urban Growth Boundary. We're also subject to both the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan, and because of the parking related changes, we're subject also to standards in the Regional Transportation Functional Plan of metros. And then, of course, the county's own comprehensive plan. And in this case, we did need to amend Chapter 3 for the changes that we're proposing in the Willamette River Greenway, and then the zoning and development ordinance. Most of the other standards in both the comp plan and the ZDO really have to do with procedural standards, which were followed in this case. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about the findings. They are in your staff report. The conclusion is that staff finds that we have met all of the applicable approval criteria. Of note is goal 5 under the statewide planning goals, because those are the rules that apply to the Willamette River Greenway. And anytime you're proposing to make changes to the Greenway, you need to make sure you are compliant with goal 15. Did I say goal 5? I meant goal 15. And so after, Melissa had mentioned that the changes that we're proposing, we believe will have a very minimal impact, if any impact, because of the small amount of the small number of docks that would potentially be allowed with this change, because of the very small number of parcels that are both within the Willamette River Greenway and the high density residential area that would then be allowed to develop housing potentially taller than 35 feet. We think that those changes are very minor and would have a minimal, if any, impact, and did not find anything in goal 15 that requires us to have either of those standards. And so staff did find that the proposed changes that we are making do comply, do maintain the county's compliance with goal 15, the Willamette River Greenway. And so I'm going to try to wrap this up into some logical buckets again. It seems to be my word of the day, because there's a lot of changes. And a lot of these changes are mandatory to comply with state law. And we have to do these. Arguably, we don't have to do them, and we could continue to implement things directly out of state law. Arguably, that does cause confusion and problems, confusion with staff, confusion with the public, and technically could put the county at risk at some point for some sort of enforcement action from the state, because we are required to implement these changes in our code, which is why we are proposing to do those. I will note, under sort of these mandatory compliance with state law options under the procedures, that sort of wonky one that I said came out of the 2026 legislature, where we can provide notice to property owners, but property owners cannot appeal to LUBA. There is, we think, some discretion to say, hey, we don't want to provide notice, even though we can. Historically, we have always provided notice in every instance where we are allowed to, and so we are proposing to do that in this case. But I suppose that is one sort of policy decision point, if you would like to go down that road. Absolutely, we can talk about that. And then the other optional items obviously are optional, including the Willamette River Greenway amendments, the clarification that Nick talked about related to lot lines and setbacks, the specialized structures, the time extensions, SROs and commercial zones. I put sort of, that's my super technical term. I mean, technically, it might be optional right now, but it does need to be added by January. And then the other changes to definitions and other clarifying amendments, those are really sort of the optional policy type decisions that are available at this point, and we can certainly talk through those a little bit more. At this point, staff does recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the board adoption of, ZDO 293, including all of the amendments that are in attachment A in that big stack of paper that you received in the mail. And that is where I'm stopping for now. That was long. I apologize. We were aiming for a little bit shorter, but it's a lot. So I will stop sharing. I will end this and we'll move on. You're on mute, Chair.
Okay, sorry about that. It looks like we have a few members of the commission that would like to have their hands raised. So Commissioner Stevens, I think you were first. So
Thank you, Chief Peterson. I think my first question is going to be, how do you want to approach comments and questions? Because as you have articulated quite well, this is an arm load. Do we want to go by each of these little packets, or do you want us? How would you best digest this, Martha?
I don't have a strong preference.
Okay. Okay.
I guess you can start asking questions, and
Okay.
any of the three of us may answer depending on sort of the piece of work that we
Okay.
did.
Well, I won't monopolize, so let me go through a couple. Some of these I actually got answered by your presentation, so thank you. Okay, just a weird one. You know how when you redline, there's always a mark on the left that says there's a red line here. And there is a mark on 202-9. Is that how, yeah, 202-9, but I couldn't find the correction. I just want to point that out. You know, there was a correction made, but it doesn't show it. So that was the easiest one you're going to get tonight. When we get into 202-12, lot area or lot size, and obviously we're into definitions. It talked about, and I found this just fascinating, for property with a comp plan design of rural agricultural or forest, lots with street frontage on county or public road right-of-way may include the land area between the front lot line and the center of the county or public right-of-way. Because I do understand that out here in the country, we own the property to the middle of that road. It's like an easement. And so I'm curious about this, not only why are we, and what would you use that for? Does anyone know?
I can take that one if.
Oh, please.
All right. The reason that we proposed that change in that location is because with the recent changes in state law that allow for accessory dwelling units in some rural areas, that's tied to a 2-acre minimum lot size standard for the lot that would have an ADU on it. Under the prior definition of lot area or lot size, you weren't able to count the area under the right of way, but then if you came in to do a land division, we would let you count that area. And so our intent was just kind of consolidating the different ways that we describe and measure lot area or lot size to say that, hey, every time we do it in these zones, we're going to do it exactly this way. This will help people who have 1.99 acres and would like an ADU in some rural areas. And it will help everyone by making it a lot easier for us to answer questions at the counter and for people to understand how big is my property actually. When I go to talk to planning and they say I need this many acres, this is exactly how I will measure it. And I only need to know the one way.
That's a perfect explanation. I couldn't come up with that scenario, and well done. Thank you, Nick, very much. Flag lot. I have a ranch with a heck of a lot of easements, and I've helped a lot of people with the easements. I found this no greater than 25 feet in width. I don't have an easement under 30 feet. So I was just curious why 25 was chosen, because most of our access easements out here are 30 plus.
Sure. The 25 feet in width is a width that we chose when we were drafting this, primarily with an eye towards the urban area. One of the unique challenges of the zoning code is that or the zoning and development ordinance is that it gets to work in both rural and urban areas. The reason we picked that no more than 25 feet in width is once you're over about 25 feet, you start having the opportunity where your flagpole, your easement, whether it's deeded or an easement, is now wide enough that you could conceivably build something in it and still meet the setbacks.
Excellent.
At which point, it's not really like a flagpole anymore. Like that's just part of your admittedly kind of strangely shaped lot. And so that's why we put the break where we did. We're of course open to feedback on if a different number makes more sense, but that was sort of
when you said urban, then it began to make sense. So, okay, got it. I only had one question actually, which is quite shocking, on the timber zone, TBR, which is the 406. Back on 406, 19 and 20, the mineral, aggregate, oil, and gas uses to include commercial utility facilities for the purpose of generating power and new electric transmission lines with right-of-way widths were all deleted. Did I miss that they were redefined elsewhere? I mean, so why? Let's just go with why were they deleted? Because there's a lot of mineral and ag on TBR stuff.
I need a minute to look that up, so
Okay.
I don't know if you want to move on to another question while
Actually, I'm going to save EFU to the end because that's my big one, but I did have one more.
Mhm.
And then those are all my questions other than the EFU stuff. So under, procedures. Uh-oh. Okay. I'm going to save that one as well. And what you said, Martha, is going to be a discussion I really want to have about this giving shorter notice and not being able to appeal to LUBA. I mean, that so flies in the face of state land use rule number 1. I really want to have a very serious conversation with this planning commission about that. So, and most importantly, the county stance on it. And I'll stop until we can get to EFU. And thank you. Thank you, Chair Peterson.
Okay, Martha, were you still looking up the response or?
You can go ahead. I can listen. I'm looking for something in particular. I know what I'm looking for. So
I'll move on to the next person so just for clarification, Tammy, your concerns about the EFU, are these that you want to talk about during deliberations, or are they questions specific to staff?
You know what? I haven't gone back through. I did this a few days ago. Let me go back through, Chair, and I will answer that in just a minute.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
I want to make sure I understood what you meant by discussing this with the commission. Don't want to get into deliberations before we've had the rest of the testimony.
Oh, no, definitely not deliberation. It's just more of a discussion and question and answer on the topic of less notified and no right to appeal. That's kind of, but
it's still a staff question, in other words.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right. Commissioner Murphy. Oh, I see. Martha, you look like you have.
I have an answer for Tammy.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
So, it's not that it was removed. It was moved up to the table of uses. So if you look up at the table of uses under mining and processing of oil, gas, and other subsurface resources, you'll see some additions there. And I think the reason that that was moved is because where you had found it struck
Yes.
was really just an explanation of what it was. This area is intended to be for standards that need to be met. And there aren't any really standards. It's just explaining what the use is. And so rather than send you down to page 20 for a little bit more explanation of what the use is, we moved it up into the actual table of uses.
Okay. That it just was very conflicting to me. Here it's like yes, and here no more. And I'm like, whoa, okay, but now I see what you're doing.
No, that's totally
Wrap-
fair. And also to answer your previous question, it's very possible when there's a line indicating track changes that it's a formatting change. I turned off all of those so you wouldn't see that on the right-hand side.
Okay.
So I don't
And
think
thank you.
it's missing anything. Mhm.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to Commissioner Murphy and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Question about 839. Will the building codes reflect home hardening at all? State Fire Marshal is pushing that. You know, there's quite an effort in the Mount Hood corridor to harden our properties. And we have insurance companies right now making sure you harden. Is our Clackamas County code going to reflect that? Or are these going to have to be efforts once you've been approached by your
Our
insurance?
building code?
Yes.
So 839, let me open that one real quick. Oh, that's the removal of, okay. So yes, the reason that that is being struck out of, and so 839 is the accessory dwelling units, and I think you're referring to us striking the requirement for, of course, this is taking its sweet time to open, striking the requirement for the particular building code requirement for hardening within areas identified on the wildfire map under certain categories. So that wildfire map was repealed. And these rules under state law that we have to follow for rural ADUs were also repealed because the map was repealed. And so there's no law anymore that requires that the county have these provisions, and they kind of don't make a whole lot of sense outside of the context of the state wildfire hazard map. The construction, the R327 construction standards in the Oregon Residential Specialty Code are not going away. But what's happening is our zoning code is not requiring it in every single case anymore. I don't know how it's required under the building code because we don't implement the actual building code. I do think that there have continued to be conversations at the state level since the repeal of the statewide wildfire map related to, well, what should we do and what changes should be made? And I think there may be some building code changes, and I don't know if other land use changes are coming, but as it stands right now, we're not required to have this in there. There is no longer a state wildfire hazard map. And so this requirement is being repealed.
I think it's going to
Murph
put.
freeze, or is he really mad at me?
No, not at all. Can you hear me now?
Oh, is it me or is he
I think
cutting
it's
out?
you.
I can hear Murph, and you're kind of jumping, Martha.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Your batteries are low.
I'm afraid I didn't hear what you said, Murph.
Okay. Should I continue then?
Yeah.
Can you? Nope.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, you have other additional questions?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
848 would this include, this is on emergency sheltering. We just had an evacuation practice. I've often asked, have we done any pre-planning of transitional housing, like for FEMA trailers or areas that we may need to put a large group of people if we do have a catastrophic wildfire, similar to the Riverside fire? Where are we going to put everybody? It's not going to be in a high school gym. We're going to need places where we could accept FEMA trailers or things of that nature for long periods of time. So I was wondering if this proposal would cover that.
So my understanding of the rules for emergency shelter siting are not intended for that. These are, if you look at the definition, an emergency shelter is a building or a cluster of buildings that provide shelter on a temporary basis for individuals and families who lack permanent housing. It's for homeless, which doesn't mean that somebody who is temporarily homeless couldn't, take advantage of one of these types of emergency shelters, but it's not an area to park temporary trailers. My understanding is that, that would be a temporary use. And so there are other ways to authorize temporary uses in areas that wouldn't require code changes. This is a more permanent use of the land. And so, for example, we use this to authorize, I call it the second phase of the Vets Village. It's not really for vets, but it's right next to the Vets Village, if you're familiar, off of Jennifer and 114th, 15th, for a shelter down there where they placed with building permits, permanent structures to house homeless for periods of time.
So on that subject, SROs. Are SROs only on one foundation in a group? Or would there be such a thing as SROs in a cottage type setup where they would share a kitchen, they would share restrooms, laundry, but they would be built more like the Veterans Village where they'd have individual units?
So that's a really good question. I have to go back to the definition of SRO. I don't know if it's required to be in one building or not.
Next is 903 setbacks.
Wait.
Okay.
I'm almost there. So single room occupancy, residential development. It doesn't require that it be in one building. So I guess theoretically an SRO could be multiple buildings.
Okay. Excellent.
So,
but only within a channel migration zone or only within an urban growth boundary?
The SROs, yes.
Okay. Now 903 setbacks. Clackamas County still has not recognized channel migration, even though it's paid for mapping within the Sandy watershed. It's also been mapped in the Molalla area. Channel migration is a serious issue. We have my neighborhood, I just walked down the street, I have a house foundation hanging over into the river. And due to angle of repose, it keeps changing, it keeps losing soil underneath it. And we're seeing some very, very intense erosions in this area. I highly recommend Clackamas County start recognizing these channel migration zones for development. Lot lines, they disappear. How do you deal with a setback in a habitat area when the property is gone and your riverbank is under your home? This is something that we need to look at as reality. We have a dynamic landscape that changes constantly. Codes might not change, but our landscapes do. And we need to take that into consideration. And I'll leave it right there. Thank you.
That's all your comments then?
For now.
Yeah, for now. All righty. I know there will be more. There'll be another opportunity, Murph, so hold on to them. Commissioner Wilson, your hand is raised. You're on mute. Well,
You're still on mute, Commissioner Wilson.
must be having technical difficulties.
I don't know.
Well, while we're waiting, is there
I
anyone else?
sent him a request to unmute himself.
Okay. Well, he was
Oh.
in for a while there. Anyway. Oh,
Unmuted.
there you are.
Okay. Well, I was asking Mr. Hart there, you said allow districts to set standards. Now, what do we mean by a district? And do some of these districts butt up against each other? And could there be some confusion as to standards in one district and they not be the same standard in another district? I'm just a little confused there. Can you clarify me on that?
I can try, yeah. When you say standards being different from district to district, are you talking specifically about the lot area that I discussed earlier, or is there another section you're looking at?
So we're not talking about things like water districts or fire districts or something like that, right?
I think he's talking about the
No.
Middle Housing Land Division.
Okay.
Yeah, so with water districts and sewer districts, there are a number of them in the county. It's another somewhat unique thing about Clackamas County, whereas often in cities you have city water. Here we have 3 or 4 different water providers. Already the standards are different between different districts. And so there's already a degree of complication inherent in that. By allowing or by amending our code in this way with the Middle Housing Land Divisions, we're allowing those districts to set their standards. And so we're actually just removing a layer of planning says you must do this, say Oak Lodge Water says you must do this, and West Sewer says you must do this. Now it's just going to be talk to the sewer provider, talk to the water provider. Planning and zoning will take what they say as they're the ones providing the service. So it's hopefully not going to increase the degree of confusion in terms of the different standards between districts, because we're, removing planning and zoning as an intervening entity in that you're still going to have to meet the West standard or the Oak Lodge standard or the Sunrise standard. You just won't also have to meet the planning and zoning standard to provide those separate lines.
So you are providing some guidelines as to what a standard can be, right?
Planning and zoning is not providing model ordinances or model standards to these service districts. They're each setting their own standards. They each have their own, I believe they each have their own advisory boards. I know West certainly does. And Clackamas River Water, I believe, does as well. So they set their own standards for what connection to their services and their systems will look like.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioner Wilson?
Nope, I've got it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Stevens, you're back.
Well, I'm happy to launch into EFU if and when Martha's ready for that. I'm trying to get it boiled down so it's not too much.
Okay, go for it.
401-15. And I know Joy will appreciate this comment, Joy Fields, because of her clear and objective standards. But just on page 15, there's significant change, significant increase, important influence, significant impact. I mean, all of that's completely subjective. So it's just something, as I was reading through all these changes, it was like, well, why are we going down that road? Why don't we say it needs to be less than 10%, or it cannot be more than 20%? Or, I mean, that's a piece of advice because it doesn't fit. Another one, I'm really struggling with getting my arms around this high value versus low value EFU soil. And what I mean by that is you can take really high value soil and grow just about anything. You can take low value and grow just about anything if you amend it and treat it properly. Or you don't have to grow high value stuff. You could do Christmas trees. And so this opportunity to get a note from the Natural Resource Conservation Service and change your soil rating. So maybe now you can build a house, or maybe you could do, this page, 40116, it worries me about more what's behind the curtain. What's behind this? Because it's a comment. I don't think you can really answer it unless you know what's behind it.
Yeah, if I could jump in on those two items really quickly.
Okay, please.
The first one, the reference that you're making is, well, first of all, we all would love clear and objective standards all the time, but it's not really possible all of the time. The state law requiring clear and objective standards for housing does not apply in farm and forest zones. And so the state law requiring clear and objective standards is only for housing development, and it's only inside of the urban growth boundary or rural residential zones. And so it is under state law perfectly okay to have discretionary standards for housing and other things. So what this addition is that you're referencing on page 15 is an explanation of what it means, or what sort of analysis you have to do to make a determination that whatever it is that you're proposing will not force a significant change in accepted farm or forest practices on surrounding land. That has always had to happen, but there wasn't a lot of clarity on how you do it. And so based on various LUBA cases, I don't know if there were actually any changes in rulemaking or state law, or if this is really just based, oh, there was, I see Nick nodding. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, this is one of the changes that came from that codifying case law OAR amendment package that they did, where they took some of the things that existed nebulously in common law and codified them into the administrative rules to make implementation easier.
Oh, okay.
And so this language comes almost directly out of the administrative rules. And so we hesitate to try to define something more clearly and objectively that comes out of the administrative rule and case law, because we could unintentionally make it mean something different. And so this is discretionary, but it actually provides a lot more direction than it used to for this kind of analysis.
Okay, that helps a lot. It's
okay.
just sometimes it really helps just to understand where this came from.
I know, well, there's a lot of red lines in this section. I totally understand. The next one you asked about on page 16, I'm assuming it's B, where it talks about a non-farm dwelling application.
Well, it kind of is all of number 2 on page 16. Yeah, just the whole.
Okay. So that is allowed under state law now. And so we have had in our code for a long time this allowance where you can go get your own separate analysis of your soils in order to demonstrate that your soils were mismapped and of a different class, or for the purposes of getting approved for this specific type, a lot of record dwelling application. A lot of record dwelling generally requires certain soil types, certain length of ownership of the property, and there's other standards. So that's been in our zoning code for a long, long time. What we recently found out is that you actually can do that same process for a non-farm dwelling as well. We didn't have it in our code, but you could do it. And so we are putting that in our code, and it allows for this process to remap your soils for the purposes of the non-farm dwelling, which also has additional standards and analysis that has to be done. But if you do have soils that are lower classification, then you possibly could get approved for a non-farm dwelling. So what I can say is nothing in this will change what state law if state law considers you high value or low value farmland for the purposes of any of the other uses up above on that table. The only other instance that I'm aware of when you can do a remapping of your soils would be for a specific type of zone change, which we've never seen in the county, but apparently has been done in other parts of the state. And I won't get into that. We don't need to put that in our code, but it's not a free-for-all. You can't just have somebody remap your soils. It also has to be, you know, it has to be the soil, what is it, scientist has to be approved by DLCD. I mean, there are some checks in there, but it is not the case where you can just get your soils remapped by an individual or even a soil scientist for the purposes of allowing all the other uses up in the table on low value versus high value. Does that help?
It does help. It does concern me. You know, people with lots of bottomless pockets can get things they want, and it just, that kind of thing concerns me with our resource lands. Down at the very bottom of 40116, there's a number 3, and wow, I read that and reread it, and I think it's just mostly out of curiosity. It's the landowner for the dwelling shall sign and record in the county deed records a document binding the landowner and the landowner's successors in interests prohibiting them from pursuing a claim for relief or cause of action alleging injury from farming or forced practice for which no action or claim is allowed under ORS. What? Do you know what that's about?
Again, this is a requirement under state law. And so this is a deed restriction that we've required for a long, long time for most, if not all, of the various dwelling types that you can get approved for. And it essentially is saying that you understand you're building a dwelling in an agricultural area and your neighbors may be doing certain farm or forestry practices, like, for example, spraying, I guess, is the one that most, often sort of comes to mind, and that you recognize they have a right to do that and you won't sue them.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not an attorney. I don't know how legally binding this is, but we have been doing this for years and years also. There are all of these restrictions out there.
Been forever since I even looked at the EFU, so it was quite fascinating. Okay, promise, my last question on EFU. Page 46. And it may be the same answer as TBR. You took out the commercial utility facilities for the purpose of generating power for public. Did you move that up into the table? Or, hold on, I'm looking now to see.
Then they get moved down.
I'll have to find where that moved.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the whole table. Not seeing it. So the question would be, why was that removed? Because there are many public
So removing it there doesn't remove the allowance. Again, this is supposed to be where there are standards. There is a standard in here. And I will need to spend a few minutes looking at it to figure out what that change is about. So we can move on again if you want.
Okay, that'd be fine. It's just I'm not seeing it in the table, but you can look that up, and that's it. Hand down. Thank you.
Okay. Looks like Commissioner Lee has their hand up. Would you like to?
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
In section 315, item number 4 on the summary says exempt developments with 20 or more dwelling units from the building design standards in the following tables. So first of all, what is an exempt development? And if none of these design standards apply, what design standards do apply?
A good question, and something I missed in my presentation. Thank you. So there was it's Senate Bill 974, I believe, in the 2025 legislature, which has this little blurb at the very end that creates a requirement within the urban area that certain developments be exempt from certain types of design standards. And they really are standards that have to do with aesthetics, with materials used or roof pitch, things like that. And the bill actually exempts, I'm saying it a little bit backwards. So the footnote, while it might be confusing and maybe needs a little bit of tweaking, the footnote is intended to mean that developments of 20 or more units of those particular housing types are exempt from those design standards. But there are other design standards, siting and design standards that would apply, things like setbacks, things like height limits. Those are not exempted standards. These are really truly aesthetic standards. Quite frankly, we don't have a lot of them in our zoning code. We don't have a lot in our single family zones. But because there are things in there that talk about like roof pitch, and there's a couple of others that may actually be designed like aesthetic design standards, we have to exempt those. So I'll look at the wording of it if it's confusing and maybe try to tweak that a little bit so it's clear, but we don't have a choice in that matter. State law says we have to do that.
So are all 20 or more dwelling units exempt, or are there certain 20 unit dwellings that are exempt? That's one of my first question. And the second one, you said that those are primarily aesthetic standards, but yet table 3513-3's got height standards, driveway widths, percentage of lot coverage, all kinds of other stuff that's not aesthetics.
So the footnote should directly relate to only, like it should be next to only those standards that are related to aesthetics.
Okay, not the entire table.
Not the entire table, no. So if you look at, what footnote was it? Number 24, you're looking on?
On section 315, it's your summary item number 4 on the front cover page.
Oh, I'm sorry. So if you go down and look at the actual table, there will be a footnote that is only related to certain things. And so the first thing that comes to mind is, where did I add it? Oh, on the top of table 24, there are building design standards. Front facades shall be designed with balconies or bays. Window trim shall not be flush with exterior.
I see it's your footnote like 24 is
Yeah.
that's what you're
And
talking
so
about?
it
Okay.
only applies to those particular
Got it.
design standards.
Got it.
So
Thank
that
you.
standard is also found in section 845 for middle housing. But again, we don't have many of these aesthetic standards in our code. A lot of other like cities have a lot more than we do.
Okay, are there any other questions from the commission?
So I guess if there aren't any other questions, Tom, are you asking questions or?
No,
or Chair?
I'm just waiting to see if there's anyone else who has questions.
Okay. So I'd like to have with questions, obviously, to staff. The one thing, and Martha Newwood, that is, in my opinion, just not right, is not only limiting or more limiting community notice and the amount of time to comment, which it's normally 20 days. We have, goes out to CPOs for community comment and input, and lowering that to 14. But more importantly, not having the right to appeal. It just, for me, I understand that a huge goal is more housing, more development, more. But, I have to use personal experience here. And I look at a lot of development that's gone in, not very far from our area. And if we had not had the appeal right, it would have gone forward and homes absolutely would have been built on landslides. So, or predicted landslides. And maybe it wouldn't have applied. I know that there's a lot of variables here, but if this commission were not to support those state changes, even though I understand they're state changes, could the county say no? We are going to give the full 20-day notice. And if somebody wants to appeal to LUBA, other than the applicant, that the county's going to support, not support it, but allow it. I mean, do we even have any flexibility here, Martha? This really upsets me. And I know it's not a county thing, it's a state thing, but.
No, I understand, and we do not. We do not have flexibility for those procedural, those procedures that are mandated from the legislature. And I mean, I guess I should leave it at that. We have some consternation about it as well, which is why we are proposing to include the notice in the one housing type where it actually is optional, whether or not you're providing notice, even though there's really limited appeal or there's no appeal opportunity to LUBA. We believe there's always an opportunity to appeal to circuit court, which isn't really a great solution, but so that's why that proposal is in there. Yes, it does. It causes us a lot of concern as well, but we do not have flexibility.
So really, I mean, it's individual citizens going to our state legislators. I mean, that's what this boils back down to, is going back to the state.
Yes, or
Okay.
CPOs or,
Right.
whatever
Right.
group.
Well, I mean, CPOs go to county, so that's not going to make any difference. I mean, it's got to be at a state level is what you're saying.
No, I mean the CPO going to the legislature or
Oh,
a larger
yeah.
group than an individual is
Yeah,
what I was
yeah.
trying to say
Yeah.
inarticulately.
Yeah, unfortunately, that has to have an attorney because you can't have an individual representing a CPO. You actually have to hire an attorney. So it would have to be at this point an individual unless we have bottomless pockets. But okay, I appreciate allowing that discussion.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Stevens? No? Okay, Commissioner Cantwine, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Kind of tagging off of Commissioner Stevens, to borrow Martha's word, consternation regarding some of the consternation regarding some of the noticing requirements. I understand that what I'm going to say is largely symbolic and just for the record, because as Martha pointed out, the vast majority of this is required for compliance with state law. But yeah, I just to echo Commissioner Stevens, I think any time that we are, and when I say we, I'm not referring to the commission, I'm saying lumping us in with the madness in Salem. Anytime we're reducing the ability of a landowner to participate in the land use process, that is diametrically opposed to one of the explicit statewide planning goals. And that just makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Again, I understand that this line of thinking is purely symbolic and for the record, because I would not advocate departing from these mandated standards and putting the county in a litigation risk or spending more county resources to defend what the county thinks is right. Doesn't seem like a good use of resources. But just going on record, really opposing the policy direction here. I understand that the state is laser focused on housing production. I respectfully don't think the reason that they're meeting generously half of their stated housing goal, I don't think issues like those that are in these code amendments are the reason we're missing those goals by more than half. I'm going to leave it at that and not
Okay.
waste any more of our time. Thank
All
you.
right. Appreciate your comments. Commissioner Satter, your hand is raised as well.
I was on that same topic.
Okay.
I put it in the chat. I don't know if everybody saw it, but maybe we
Yeah.
could have a discussion. I know that when we had a development come in here in Malala, the it was a commercial development,
Yeah.
to be clear. At first, they added after some residential, but the state wasn't requiring them to put a light in at this commercial development, and the developer was volunteering to do it. The city wanted it done. Everybody wanted it done, but ODOT. And so the city council wrote, they spoke about it, they agreed on language, and then they sent a letter to the state, to ODOT, expressing their concerns. Now, ODOT still didn't cave, but maybe that's something we could do. We could talk about, I feel like at least half of us, and maybe more, have really big concerns. Yes, Scott in the chat, that was with the Dollar General and everything. But at least half of us have concerns, about this. And maybe we could express that to the state. And this affects our families and our quality of life.
I don't disagree, but I think we're kind of getting into the discussion section of the meeting. So if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind revisiting this topic when we get into deliberations, because I tend to agree it might be something we want to go on record. But now's not the time. We're still in the testimonies phase. So if it's all right, I'd like to, if there's no more questions of the county staff, I'd like to move into the next part of the meeting. So if there's anybody in the audience that wants to talk, they have an opportunity to ask make their testimony as well. So,
May I just hop in with a quick answer to
Yeah.
Tammy's question in 401?
okay.
Because I figured it out. On page 46, the commercial utility facilities is not actually struck. If you look down at the paragraph below, it says in different words the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It had been redundant, and then some of it was moved in that extra sentence. Okay? It took me a while to find that too.
Well done. Thank you very much, Martha. Yes, I'm starting to read it and there it. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good answer. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, I think we'll move on to the next phase then. So have we received any correspondence on this matter other than the items that have been included in the meeting packets?
No, we have not.
Okay. So now it's time for public testimony. So if there's any of you in the audience that would like to provide testimony, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. If you're not sure where it is, if you have a PC or an iPad, there's a raise hand button on the Zoom bar. And if you're using a telephone, run by telephone, use the *9 to activate the raise hand feature. When the moderator switches to you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a moment. Primarily, you'll see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. The moderator will call upon you when it's time for you to provide testimony. For the record, please begin by stating your name, where you are from, or whom you are representing. So once you have provided testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be retuned to return to normal. So we're going to start with, are there any representatives of the community planning organizations or hamlets here to speak? Doesn't appear to be any. Okay. Let's see. So So now I guess we'll move into the public testimony. Do we have any person here that wishes to speak on this proposal? You'll each have 3 minutes to testify. So do we have anyone from the public that would like to testify on this EDO?
Chair Peterson, I have Marty Baun,
Okay,
followed by Pat Erdenberger, and
okay,
then Dennis Tilka.
okay. So I guess we'll start with Marty.
Good evening. Thank you so much for listening. I just have a small request on the 4-year approval process that's now in place with the 2-year extension. By the way, I am with the Hoodland CPO. You know us, is very active out in this area. In regard to the 4-year approval with a 2-year extension going to simply a 6-year approval, we're quite concerned in our area because of our rivers that seem to change course every time it floods. If you take a look at the recent Zigzag River mitigation study and then also at the Sandy River mitigation study, you'll see that these rivers move often quickly and take land and give land. With a 4-year approval, it's already a little bit tenuous. For example, the county has land up for sale that due to the river being changed, that land is now in the river. So these rivers change often and swiftly. We simply ask that the 4-year approval with 2-year extension be kept for, the river and stream conservation area, ZZO 704, which we're highly involved with. And I realize that you want to do a blanket 6-year, but we're asking you to please take exception for ZDO 704. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question? Or no?
Thank
Thank you for your comment. Yeah. Next is
I have Pat Erdenberger.
okay.
Yes, this is Pat Erdenberger. I'm the chair of the Hoodland CPO.
Welcome.
I'd like to thank you all for a very interesting meeting. Thank Martha, Melissa, and I guess it's Nick for all their hard work. This isn't easy. My comment is similar to Marty's on page 6, item 5 of the time extension. It's extremely important up here for any of the riverside properties in land use permits that we watch closely where the midline of the river is and the high side and the low side. It changes very rapidly, and it doesn't require a major disastrous flood for the river to migrate. And we've talked with people in disaster management who have done presentations on the migration of the river. Particularly Jay Wilson has some very interesting talks on that. So I'd just like you to know that for riverside property, having something that is such a long period of time is a problem. And I'm sorry, Melissa, I don't want to make your job harder. I would like the riverside property to be considered as along with the EFU, AGF, and TBR as an exception. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your comments. And next. My screen doesn't show all of these, Darcy, so I'm relying on you.
Okay.
I've got you. I have Dennis Tilka.
Yes, my name is Dennis Tilka. I live in Welches. I have a question for Martha on type 1-8, if a housing is approved under clear and objective standards or regulations is unappealable. I thought all of our zoning ordinance were going to be clear and objective under the new law. So that means Martha said something about discretionary permits were included, but 704 I thought was a discretionary permit and it's going to be under the same regulations. Am I correct? Oh,
So
do you want to keep talking?
Well, are you talking about the new type 1H approval? Is that what you're asking about?
Yes.
So yes, all housing has to be approvable under clear and objective standards, but part of the law that requires clear and objective standards also allows for optional discretionary pathways. And so like a good example would be your setback from the Willamette River is 150 feet. That's your clear and objective standard. But if you meet certain other discretionary standards, maybe you can build 100 feet from the river. And so in this case, in that example, the housing would have to be 150 feet, not exercising that optional discretionary standard.
So is 704 going to be clear and objective standard is going to be appealable or not?
So 704 will be amended through a different project that Joy Fields and Jennifer Hughes are working on to assess 704, all of our Goal 5, our natural resource protected areas, hazard areas, to ensure that there is a clear and objective pathway for housing. And so presumably, if a housing development uses only those clear and objective standards, it can be approved under this 1H pathway.
Okay. I have another comment under the time extensions for the Sandy River, or for 703 and 704. 703 is the floodway. Is one, when they make the application for a floodplain permit, maybe 50% of the land is within a floodplain. But next year, 100% of the land is within a floodway. How are you going to allow them to continue to process that application when their land is in a floodway now? That was one example. And then another example is on the PRCA, the 704, you have to mark the mean high water line. And again, 1 year, the mean high water line might be 100 foot from your house. The next day it could be 10 foot from your house. So how are you going to allow someone to process that? Thank you very much.
Martha, do you want to comment on that, or do you want to hold that?
So I may need an assist from Nick or Melissa, but I think regarding the flood hazard area, those areas we regulate to FEMA's maps. FEMA's maps are not updated every year, and so whatever regulations apply currently will apply to the mapped area on FEMA's maps that we have adopted. And so I don't know that something that has floodplain on it 1 year is suddenly going to have floodway on it the next year. I can only recall in the long time that I've been here, over 19 years, one change to the FEMA maps that happened at the federal level to remapping. Regarding how we're going to process it, I mean, I guess I may need to think through if I understand what you're asking. You know, what happens when there's a stream and somebody's proposing development is they come in and they get their land use approval, and their land use approval is conditioned on, so let's say, Dennis, you were approved for this dwelling. When you come in to permit your dwelling, you need to show us that your dwelling is 100 feet from the mean high water line. If in that year that you were approved and you're coming in to permit your dwelling, your mean high water line has moved somewhat, you still need to be 100 feet from that mean high water line. If it is the case where it has rendered your property undevelopable, that's sort of a different question. And I don't know that I'm not familiar enough with our codes to understand in that case what might or might not happen. But if the mean high water changes somewhat, you still, when you come in to build your dwelling, have to be 100 feet from where the mean high water line is at that time. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add from the planning team.
That's an interesting dilemma. Come on up. I'd like to kind of explore this more, maybe when we get into deliberations, because it raises some questions in my mind. But in the interest of getting through the testimony, I'd like to move on to the next person who would like to speak. Darcy, are you keeping?
I don't have any more hands.
Okay, we're done. All right. Okay. I think we can close the hearing, public testimony period of the and move into discussion. But I'm thinking we've been going for almost 2 hours. If anyone would want to take a short break, maybe we can take that now, and then we get into discussions when we get back. Everyone's agreeable to that? Say 5 minutes or less? That work? I'm seeing no.
Would 3 minutes be enough?
3 minutes would be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right. I'll see you in a minute. No. You can break. 2 hours. 2 hours.
If you would humor me, Tom, I actually have sort of a second part to my answer to Mr. Tilka's question.
Okay,
So what happens when you get a 3-minute break?
yeah, that's fine. Well, I needed to stand up. My legs were cramping up. Needed some water, so I thought, yeah, 2 hours is a long time to sit without a break. So
Thank you. That's why I put my hand up. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to make it to the end.
no. I mean, we go for 2 hours. We usually would. I know when we met in person, we'd usually take a break after 2 hours. So anyway, I needed to get a charger for my iPad. I was worried of I had to switch to my iPad, which is a smaller screen, so I don't see everything as well, but it works better than my computer for some reason. But my battery was getting low, and it's like, okay, I need to also make sure I don't run out of power. That would be embarrassing. I thought I'd brought a cord up with me, but it was the wrong one. Anyway. So I don't know if everyone's back. I can't, for some reason, I'm not seeing or is it participants? Here we go.
Darcy's not back, and the ones that don't have pictures are Jennifer, Ryan, and Scott. So I don't know. Nope, there's.
I have a camera off because I was enjoying a fruit pouch.
Ah.
My daughter's eating solid foods now, so we can share share some of the same foods.
Wow.
Awesome.
Congratulations. I didn't know you had a new little one.
Yeah, she's a little over a year now.
Oh, wow. I just became a grandparent here 2.5 years ago, so we've been having a lot of fun with our grandchild. They live nearby. In fact, Thursday, they're starting once a week. We babysit in the mornings on Thursdays, so they come over here to us having to go over to my.
Very cool.
So it's been a lot of fun. So
Very nice.
I don't know. Is everyone back? I don't really know. I'm going to assume we are.
I think so.
Okay.
We can go on without Darcy. She'll show up.
Okay. So Martha has a response that she just thought of during the break. So we'll let Martha have one more shot at trying to explain herself here. So
excellent. Thank you for indulging me. So I was thinking, of course, as I was getting my water on the break, and I think sort of the second part answer to Mr. Tilka's question or others is if conditions on a property have changed so significantly, it is likely under our current standard, under our current 4-year approval period or the 6-year approval period, that you would be required to actually submit a new land use application. If something has changed so significantly and the approval really no longer is applicable to what's going on your property, we would require a new approval. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There seems to be sort of degrees of what might happen on a property.
Okay. So in other words, the request to keep the 4-year with the 2-year option, really this circumstance, which came up repeatedly, they really would have to start over. And so you're not, the 6-year, 4-year really wouldn't matter at that point because you're starting over. Is that what you're saying?
If the property has changed significantly.
Which that would be pretty significant in my book with the situations they're talking about.
With that said, I mean, it's several people have requested it. It's certainly something to consider.
I just wanted to clarify what that would mean. That's all. Commissioner Murphy, I see you have your hand raised. I'm guessing you'd have a comment on some of your neighbors up there that were commenting.
Yes, I want to thank the three members of the Hoodland CPO for coming. They come with some of my encouragement too. I talk about this quite often. Since 2011, I've been involved with channel migration and the state, the federal, the county, at all levels, trying to come up with some kind of design or floodplain development standards that restrict development in these high hazard areas. Like I said, you can walk down the street right now from my house and there's a house hanging over the edge. There's another one that's kind of ready to go. Just upstream a couple hundred yards, there's two water lines flopping in the river. One is owned by Wes, the other is owned by my neighborhood's water system. That's $4 million worth of water line flopping around. What are we going to do? Are we going to continue to add this type of development at this level? What they're bringing up is that if we put it on a 6-year hold, that you can go ahead and pull a permit, and 6 years later, your property may not exist. Now, who's going to report that? Or there may have been significant damage to that property, or your property may have been found to cause damage if it has a solid structure on it. These are other issues. When we start filling up our pervious areas and closing off our side streams, we have some serious issues.
Yeah. So the question I would have is, okay, I agree with what you're saying, but that's not really what we're dealing with tonight. In my mind, that's a different policy that we need to make that even allows development in those areas. Or am I mistaken that these policies, it does affect these policies that we're viewing tonight? I just want to get clarification on that.
Having this setback or having this permit go from a 4 years to a 6 year automatically without any extension process, I think is wrong. I think it could be lowered to 2 years. I've seen the river change dramatically since I've lived here, and you're at risk if you don't do your homework and you buy lots to develop. You better know what this river is going to do. It's taken over so many properties.
So what would you propose we do for that? Are you proposing that the language be amended to keep it as it is, as was requested, specific for those areas?
If we're going to change it, then we should change it to actually protect people, not prolong it. This is encouraging development. I think we need to, in these particular high hazard areas. We haven't adopted the maps that identify this as a high hazard area, even though Clackamas County paid for them. So this is something that has been very dear to my heart to try to bring for the future of this area, the safety of this area, along with our disaster management. We need to please pay attention to what we're doing legal wise. More homes in this particular area is not better for the area.
So as it relates to these proposed amendments,
as it relates to this, I would say leave as is on 703, 704, 705, 706, 709, 710, and 710. Yep, those right there. I wouldn't change them.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that. All right. Any other? I'd like to hear from all of the rest of the commissioners on any their take on what they've heard. Are there any other suggestions that to staff that we might want to make or acknowledge in a motion? Or are we okay with everything with maybe the exception of what Commissioner Murphy is proposing? So who wants to go first?
I want to get clarification, Murph, on what you're saying. Are you saying that you want to keep go ahead and tell me again what it is you want to keep.
Currently, an application is good for 4 years. And then with they have opportunity to extend that application for another 2 years to 6 years. But it has to go through a review. It's looked at that time. Am I correct, Martha? That when before you get your extension,
Yes.
it's reviewed again. So what this policy that we're looking at tonight is say, when you receive your application, it automatically goes to 6 years with no review after 4.
And without the review, what's going to happen?
In the dynamic neighborhood that I live in, we have seen land changes of the river just in my neighborhood alone. In 2011, the river's bed rose 12 feet. It came up from erosion upstream. This past December, under the Zigzag Bridge, at which I helped set the depth gauges this summer with disaster management, the elevation of the riverbed came up 6 feet, and it's still there. So that means the water goes all different directions. And when it does that, it starts eroding. It takes properties that you thought were safe, and they just disappear.
So somebody buying that property, and they don't build on it for 4 years, then the river changes, okay? But if they build on it on 2 years and the river changes, they've lost their house.
Exactly.
So why, it doesn't make sense if you're going to have it for 6 years, the river is going to change. So what are we protecting here? Are we protecting the person even though they built on it in 2 years and the house went away?
Michael, I've been trying to bring sense to these high hazard areas that have been identified, these channel migration zones. I mean, if you went to a map, if you Google channel migration zone mapping in Oregon, it comes up with rivers all over the place. The Malala River, definitely. The Willamette River is one of them. These are rivers that we know will change course because they have a composite riverbank of sand and cobble.
So Murph, if I could interrupt for a second, I don't think you're really answering his question. And I'm kind of on the same page with Commissioner Wilson here. I'm trying to understand how the 6 year versus 4 year and 2 year makes a difference for the person that's. I'm struggling with what the difference is for them, why they're proposing that. What advantage does it give them? I'm struggling with that as well. And so if you could maybe help me understand how that benefits them by maintaining the same way. I understand the river's going to change.
We have 704 that governs our area with a generally 150-foot setback from the high water mark. If that changes, and you've already staked out your place, pulled your permits, you're going to build your house right here. But the river is now encroached within that 150 feet. Now it's only 75 feet. And you're going to keep building because your permits are okay. They're not going back to review. Now that's what I'm saying is that you will not see, or the county will not see that until foundations are set, inspections come.
But what does that have to do with the 4 year versus 6 year? How does that?
Well,
what does that make?
More of a time for that to happen. That channel migration to come into your property.
I tell you, Murph, if I was buying a piece of property there and I was concerned about the river changing, I would like to see what happened in 6 years rather than in 2. Because I could then say, well, okay, I'm not going to build, I'm not going to lose my house.
Well, I've seen 300-year floods since 1996.
Okay. Do you have anything more, Commissioner Wilson?
No, I got it.
All righty. Commissioner Lee, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. to answer Murphy's question and issue, it's probably beyond the scope of this particular discussion, but what I have seen done is apply like special overlay districts to those type of properties, and then you can have more control. But that's beyond what we're talking about here. That's probably what needs to happen. But I raised my hand because I wanted to echo the concerns about the public input provisions being removed, and I'd like to put my name in the hat to help put together some sort of document from the Clackamas County Planning Commission to whatever appropriate state agency to say where we don't think this is right. You know, we are governed by the people, and the people should have input on these very important decisions that are being made. And when you start removing people's input, it starts to sound a little different than what we're used to seeing in our constitutional republic. So I'm a little frustrated by that, and I want to put my name to that also.
But I will cheerfully throw my name on there too, not to interrupt, but
Yeah,
You're fine.
I think there are quite a few of us will probably want to do that. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm not proposing a motion at all, but I have made motions in the past and they became a little controversial. So I thought as part of the deliberation, the first thing I would state is I would support, 99.9% of this. And so if a motion were to be made, I'd go down the line of a motion to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners approval of ZDO 293. And then would go on to say the Planning Commission would like, or certain members or whatever, would like to share our objection to limiting citizen noticing, limiting citizen response time, and eliminating appeal rights. I think those were the three keys, but I wanted to throw that out as an idea as we're deliberating to talk upon that kind of a motion. Now, if we want to add something more regarding stuff on the mountain or, along creeks and rivers, we could do that. But other than that, I'm really, for me personally, deliberating, I'm very supportive other than what we talked about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner Murphy, your hand is raised again.
I'll keep it short, Tom, but
Yeah.
within our planning commissioner's bylaws, which
Yeah.
has your signature on it, you have the right to form a special committee
Okay.
as chair.
All right. Noted. Are you proposing one? I'm sorry, you went blank. You went mute on me.
Sounds like
you-
you're cooking here, Tom.
Okay. All right. Other commissioners, any would like the opportunity to share any concerns or where they stand on this? See, we've heard from Commissioner Lee. We've heard a little bit from all of you a little bit. Commissioner Satter, you have anything more you'd like to add or comment on?
I have one more thing, which
Okay.
I want to talk to Murph about. I believe that what the purpose of that movement from 4 to 6 was to save work time for the planning department. And I think that that's important, that we change that so that they have more time, okay? It's not, they want to make this thing a little more smooth in the application of this appeal stuff. So I really think that keeping it at 6 years like they're proposing is good.
Okay. Commissioner Satter, did you want to comment on anything or are you good?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of the things we deal with are mandated by state law. So
Right.
we don't get a lot of leeway on it. So there's that. But we could talk afterwards about, if we want.
Are you so you're generally okay with what's being proposed or?
Yes. There was a few things, but those were state mandated. So
Yeah. What happened? Did we lose one of our commissioners?
Commissioner Founds apparently lost power.
Oh, no. Okay. I just see he's not on the list anymore. I have a question back to, for Martha, if you don't mind, Martha.
Go ahead.
Regarding this conversation that and what Commissioner Murphy is proposing and what was being proposed, from your perspective, what's the pros and cons as it relates to their particular situation? I'm curious what you think.
We all know I have a lot of opinions. So I think, I think it could go either way, right? I agree with Commissioner Wilson that the reason that we are proposing this change is to save the applicant time and money. A time extension does cost money and take time, but also to save staff time. But at the same time, I understand that maybe the river and stream conservation area, and particularly up on the mountain, is a little unique. You have to understand that somebody comes and applies for a time extension if they have not already implemented what was approved. And so they need a time extension to have more time to do it. And I think what I'm hearing is that it is important in certain areas to be able to take this relook after 4 years. Whereas in some areas, it might not be important because the rules don't change, the landscape doesn't change, and it really is just an exercise that takes time and money for very little value. But there may be some value in exempting 704 specifically from this rule because the rules are specifically tied to where the river is located. I think exempting it for the flood management district or within the greenway or the habitat conservation areas, those are mapped areas that don't really change. But the river does change, and so there may be some value in looking at it again after 4 years if nothing has been built yet. I think that exempting that adds pretty minimal administrative burden, under this whole time extension if we continue to do the 6 years for others. But it is time and money for the applicant.
Either way.
Martha, how many times does this happen?
How many times does this happen?
Yeah,
How many time extensions?
We're on the review after 4 years. They was denied or whatever because of a river change. How many?
Oh, I have no idea off the top of my head how many would be denied because of a river change. I know we don't deny a lot of time extensions, and I see Nick looking up the application stats so he can tell you how many time extensions we. Is that what you're doing, Nick?
Yeah, I did flip through our permitting records back to 2021 and did a pretty coarse search for time extensions. There's a possibility something was filed wrong, but from today back to 2021, we did 6 pages worth of time extensions, which should be like 40 something records, and only 2 of those were related to these stream conservation area permits that we're discussing. And so obviously that's very much napkin math. It was not an exhaustive search, but the circumstance of a stream conservation area permit being extended does happen, but is rare in the scope of time extensions. A lot of them are for partitions and subdivisions where people need to build roads, and that just takes longer than the 4 years, was the bulk of what I saw as I was clicking through.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Murphy, your hand's about to begin.
So with that in mind, it doesn't seem that it's going to affect much if we remove like 704 from that. Very little effect. Most applications are completed within 4 years. there's not necessarily an extension needed if they've only extended 2 since 2021. I don't see a big demand or a loss of large dollars because of it.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Would anyone like to entertain a motion for us then on this item?
Well, I'm happy to do it, but I have no concept how to word how the commission feels about the extension.
Could that be a separate action after the?
I don't think it would be a motion as much as a comment, but Martha can guide me on that.
That could be an amendment.
An amendment.
Yeah, you make the motion. I move that the Clackamas County Planning Commission recommend approval of ZDO 293 FY 2026 minor amendments to the Clackamas County Board of County Commissioners. Okay? That's to do the whole thing the way it is. If Murph wants to make an amendment that says we want to change that particular piece of it, then we can vote on that.
And I get that. I think what Commissioner Stevens is talking about is some of us also feel strongly that even though we don't have a choice, that we need to make a comment about some of the new provisions that don't allow the appeal process other than the applicant, as an example. And I don't know how that's what you're struggling with, whether we can put that in motion or not.
I mean, and Commissioner Wilson's correct. I can make the motion as I stated it, and then we can all vote. And then I make a motion, there's a second. Once there's a second, Murph can then, or Commissioner Murphy can then, I think, amend or make a motion to amend, and then that's voted on. So I'm not sure which order that goes in, but
You vote on the amendment first and then the proposal as amended or without the amendment?
You can propose, you can make a motion that includes the parts that you would like to amend of the proposal.
Right.
One full motion.
Right.
Or you can make a motion as Commissioner Wilson stated. You get a second, and then there's a motion to amend.
Right.
Which has to have a second and go through the approval.
Right.
so the amendment would have to be voted on, then the actual motion would have to be voted on.
Correct.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'm happy to make the motion if we're ready.
Okay.
Make a motion to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners approval of ZDO-293. The Planning Commission would like to share our strong objection regarding the limitation of citizen noticing, of limiting citizens' response time, and eliminating appeal rights on land use applications. That's my motion.
Okay. Everyone understand that? Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
Second it.
Okay, so I think it was Commissioner Lee was first. I heard two of you. I think it was Lee first. Okay. Commissioner Murphy, are you wanting to amend this, or are we going to leave it as is?
I'd like to amend.
Okay.
I would like to remove the proposed comprehensive plan and ZDO amendments number 11 and number 12 under list of attachments A on page 22 of the statute.
No. What are 11 and 12? I thought we were
703 and 704.
okay. I've got the packets. That's what I'm looking at. So you're looking at a written document. Okay, I'm with you. Okay, is there any? Do we need a second for that amendment? I guess.
Yes, you need a second.
Do we have a second? Oh, hold it. Martha, you have your hand up.
I have a clarifying question.
Okay.
You're proposing to just totally remove all of the amendments under 70 and 703?
703 and 704 were only changes to the.
Oh, 703. I'm sorry. I wrote down 705. So the effect is keeping the 4-year, 2-year approval period that we have right now the same in the floodplain management district and in river and stream conservation area.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Clear as mud. I know.
Yeah.
Clear as.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, because I wanted to make sure that was what I was assuming it was. Nick, you have your hand up.
I'd just like to note that there is one clerical correction in 703. So there's one amendment to remove the time extension provisions, and then there's one corrected citation. And so I don't know if the intention is to strike both of those, or if it's just to strike the change to the time extension procedures.
Just to strike the time extension, please.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay. So do we have a second to Commissioner Murphy's amendment? No second? Well, guess if we don't have a second, I guess we can't vote on it.
Right.
It fails to just no second.
Okay. Well, sorry, Murph. So we have been moved and seconded to, I can't repeat everything that you said, Tammy, because I don't have it written down, to accept the staff recommendations along with the commissioner's concerns regarding the notification processes and appeal. So can we take a vote here? So I think, Darcy, you'll take the roll call for us, please.
Yes.
Tom, I want to make sure we're clarifying. There's no amendment to it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Tom, can we clarify exactly how this is going to read as far as the motion that will appear to the the board?
Well, I'm assuming it's going to read the same way Tammy proposed it.
Darcy should have that verbiage. You have it, Darcy?
Have it.
The motion will be taken exactly out of the recording.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So can we take a vote now then? Darcy, would you want to go ahead and go through, poll the commissioners for me, please?
Sure. Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy.
Nay.
Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantonwine.
Yes, and calling attention to the objections that I raised earlier, and which are captured in the resolution related to public noticing. Thank you.
Yes, those will be captured in the minutes as well as the motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Satter.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay. So I think we are done with the public hearing. It's now closed. So we do have minutes from a previous meeting that need to be approved. I assume everyone's had a chance to read those minutes. Anyone have any comments to the minutes, or can I get those approved?
I'll make a motion to approve as distributed.
I second it.
Okay. Was that Commissioner Cantwine and Commissioner Wilson? Did you get the right people? Yeah. Okay. All those in favor, we'll just do this orally. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Did I get Brian? Did I get Tammy?
No, I have to abstain. I was not in attendance.
You're abstaining?
As you should.
I wasn't there either, so yes, I'm abstaining as well. Okay, so I think they pass. Schedule review. Anything on the schedule? Looks like we have something in next month in June, and then August.
Yes. So there is a quasi judicial land use hearing for a proposed comp plan zone change on June 22nd. That will be with senior planner Taylor Campy. She's taking the lead on that. And I will be there with an assist if she needs it, although she's very competent and probably doesn't. It looks like there is a tentative study session for the Clear and Objective Standards project on August 10th. I know that there's a lot of things percolating for sort of late summer, fall, but I don't know of anything else that's coming in June or July, but I will let Jennifer make the decision, obviously, whether or not to cancel the meetings. I can say that the board hearing for this item that you heard today is scheduled for Tuesday, June 16th. That is the right date, I think. Tuesday, June 16th at 11 a.m. And so obviously we'll forward your motion. We always write a little summary of what happened, and we'll certainly bring forward your concerns as well. It may be a good one to have some representation to provide testimony and sort of reiterate that if you can show up, Chair Peterson or somebody else.
Okay. I'll put that on my calendar. If anyone else wants to join me, they're welcome to. Commissioner Stevens, your hand is raised.
Two things really fast. Bravo. I mean, Martha and Nick and Melissa, really bravo. Well done. What a monster to take down. And the second thing, several commissioners stressed their desire to be involved in a letter to the state. Anyone leaping up to volunteer to draft something that we could all get on a Zoom and put together, later. I've got my arms kind of heavy with some other obligations in the Hamlet right now, so I just don't have time right now. But if somebody thought they might have some time to draft something up, and then we could get together and, Scott, would you be willing to do that?
I would be happy to take a first pass at it and share.
Awesome.
I know Commissioner Lee was excited as well, so I don't want to step on any toes, but I'm happy to, start a Word document and circulate that if we wish.
If we did a Zoom, besides Commissioner Lee and you, Scott, myself, anyone else like to be on that Zoom to discuss it? Commissioner Murphy and
Commissioner Satter.
Excellent. Awesome. I think it's a great idea. So I have no idea who exactly we'd send it to, but I think we know people who would know. So thank you, Scott, if you'd be willing to do that. And then we've got a way to get those out to us via email. And then, I'm happy to schedule up a Zoom.
Tammy,
happy to do that.
Yeah. So we have a quasi subcommittee, as Murph suggests. Tammy suggests. Tammy put it together. There is other business. My term has ended. However, in light of the fact that we don't know Commissioner Murphy's status at this point, I believe you're re-upping. Is that true? And also we lost a commissioner. So I would propose that we defer that to the next meeting, so we will know for sure who all is the makeup of the current commission will be. And so a lot of you, thank you for responding to my query for any interested parties. I didn't get a lot of takers, but I got a few. But I think in light of the circumstances, I'd like to postpone it a month. Not that I want to be chair any longer, but I just think it might work out better once we know the status of all the commissioners before we do a vote. So everyone okay with that?
Commissioner Peterson or Chair Peterson, who is the current vice chair? Is it?
Commissioner Murphy.
It is. Okay. I mean, kind of quote unquote normal succession is the vice chair becomes chair, but now I understand that challenge. So we may be only looking for a vice chair, but we'll see. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
Well,
that.
or I was curious if anyone else was interested in. I mean, you don't necessarily have to move the vice chair up. We could also bring in a new chair. I was because that's how it worked for me. I was approached. I'd only been on the commission for, well, you were there, Tammy.
Yeah.
Wasn't there very long, and all of a sudden someone, hey, Tom, you would like me to be the chair. And I go, what?
A little wet behind the ears.
Huh?
You're a little wet behind the ears.
Yeah, now
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just kind of jumped into the fire.
Yeah.
Then I got a nice long wait period of where I just sit back and I'm back. But anyway, if everyone's okay, I propose we put that off 1 month,
Yeah.
and then I can move on and just be a spectator again. And, so